tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, February 28th, this is the eve of the end of our, well, it is the end of our second month of winter retreat. It's a 3-month, this monastery, it's a 3-month annual winter retreat, so we go through until the end of March. So, did Sister Nyanasiri and Anagarkadipa make it back yet? They made it. Okay, good. Yeah. So they just came back from India, and Sister Nyanasiri also in Thailand. So it's nice to know they made it back safely. So one of the chants that we do quite frequently, mostly in the morning, but not exclusively, but usually in the morning, is a reflection called the 10 subjects for frequent recollection by one who has gone forth. So, which specifically refers to people who've taken up the monastic life, but the actual 10 reflections can be applied to any human being, in my opinion. And it's a very helpful set of reflections. And the one that's been standing out for me, in particular just for some reason this morning, one that stood out was, I should strive to abandon my former habits. This should be reflected again and again by one who has gone forth. I should strive to abandon my former habits. Now, I'm assuming it's not referring to good habits. Let's hang on to those. Okay. Although, if we even clinging to good habits can become an obstruction to peace, if we maybe have what might be a quote unquote good habit, but it's maybe not the right time, not the right place. You know, there is a thing called time and place. We know that. Or if it's creating some sort of unwholesome mind state or a sense of identity that we're clinging to, like, oh, I've got great habits, and I'm one with really good habits. There's all sorts of ways that even clinging, if we cling to even good habits, it could be an obstruction. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't do or perform those good habits. It's not to say that we should just throw it away. Okay, no, I don't want to form an identity around having good habits, so I'm not gonna develop any. No, that's not wisdom. That would be quite foolish, actually. So maybe the habit that we're exhibiting is the habit of clinging to a sense of self. Maybe that's the habit. Because also suffering, dukkha, is a habit. Pain is different. Pain is just something that comes and goes. But the actual suffering, discontent, dis-ease, all these other aspects of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, that sense of non-acceptance. These are habitual responses to stimuli, to experiences, sense experiences through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. These are our doors of experience, the doors of perception. And how we respond to those, that forms the feeling tones in our heart and mind. And so that's why the more clearly we can see the reality of sense impression, the reality of experience, of day-to-day experience. Because the goal is to not just lock ourselves away from sense experience. That's also, is that what we're supposed to do? I don't think so. It's not what the Buddha did. Yeah, he did periods of solitude. And he did very intense periods of solitude, which he then realized was not the way. He found a middle way of practice, more engagement. But there are times that we should step back, and like for instance during these retreats, and we have these 3 months, and right now approximately just a little bit less than half of the community is on solitary retreats. So that's great. That's really important to do that, to step back at times, to create a more quiet opportunity. And one of the main things that will give us a chance to see is habits. Because all of a sudden we take out, this is where sense restraint or more like sensory, stepping back from a lot of sensory input is, like you go to a hut in Hammerwood here, so you got no electricity, you've got no running water, you've got a log burning fire, it's very simple. Maybe you've got an MP3 player and you've hopefully loaded on things like Dhamma talks or chanting. Yeah, there's things you can be doing to fill your time, but your avenues of distraction are greatly reduced. And by reducing that and then using quietude, like meditation, formal meditation, quietude, reflection, then hopefully the mind and heart settle, and the more things settle, the more clearly things will stand out. The more, hopefully, that's you want to see clearly. That's what vipassana. So for those of us who are familiar with that term vipassana, referring to a particular type of practice, which is very well known globally, it literally means to see clearly or to see into. And so the settling meditations, like maybe if we're using the breath or whatever, we're settling the mind, settling the heart, but that's not the goal. That's a very short-term goal. The goal is to develop discernment, to see the obstacles in our life, in our inner being, so that we can let go of those. We can release those obstacles, we can transcend the obstacles and realize unshakable peace. Meditation, if we're just using that as a short-term goal to calm, that's not wrong necessarily, but it's very limited. And so the image, the Ajahn Chah, I've been reading a lot of Ajahn Chah's teachings because we're doing daily readings at the mealtime. Also, we've been doing some readings in the morning during our group practice. And he was talking about this very thing, that the sort of the limitation, if we're just stopping at calming the mind. He likened it, he used the image of putting a stone on grass, on living grass. So if we go out here into the cloister garden and I put a stone there, and so it doesn't take very long before like you might peek under the stone after a week and the grass is either died or is on the way, and you pick up the stone after a week or two or whatever and you go, oh, wow. But leave the stone away, and before not very long at all, what happens? Grass grows back. So Ajahn Chah was saying that's like if we use like just the calming meditations, the concentration meditations to just settle the mind, and that's as far as we go. Then as we come out, because it's a temporary peace, then as we come out of that meditation, then the opportunity for those things that were maybe causing obstacles, because they're no longer held down with those very exercises. So what we want to do is we want to get to the root. We want to use that calming, that settling, that collecting the mind, bringing that collectedness to see the things that are the root causes dukkha. The root causes of the obstacles that bind us and keep us away from that unshakable peace that the Buddha talked about. Now, habits. So creating good habits, and so creating the habits that lead us to, that make us easy to get through just living. The habits, taking care of the body. Really practical, just taking care of this body. This is our vehicle right now. This is our vehicle, and we can, and as all of us are in this room, we're intent in some way, shape, and form, or form, to realize peace. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. There's so many other things that we could be doing tonight. So, creating that habit, that's a habit. We can create that as a habit to lean towards things that take care of the mind and the heart, take care of the body, as I said, it's so that it can carry us through these things. To take care socially, to create good habits socially, so that we can live peacefully with other people, to live in, whether it's a big community like this, or whether it's family, or it's just we live alone and we're engaging with other people, at work, at school, wherever we go. To create good habits of responses to stimuli, responses to sense experience. So these are all, and these are all achievable. To create good habits of spiritual practice. So the habit, that's where I think I reflected on this a couple of weeks ago. I quickly mentioned that living a community is a great place to create good habits because we've got a routine. It's not just a free-for-all here. There's a routine. The bell rings, I guess, at 4:30 in the morning puja at 5. We meditate for some amount of time. Then we've got chores. We're putting in effort to keep this place clean and well repaired. We have the habit, we have our set meal times. We don't indicate what kind of food we want. We receive what's offered with gratitude. If it's not something that we particularly like, we're grateful that we're getting food. These are creating really good habits. The habits of being encouraged to then use our downtime or our spare time, open time skillfully. We're encouraged to do that. Not just get stuck into doing something that's frivolous or just frittering away our time. So all these encouragements, all these, all through the day and night, we've got this opportunity to create really wholesome habits. So I was one of the translations for sankharas, so the Pali word sankhara, is sort of formations, mental formations, habitual formations is another translation, volitional formations. There's quite a few translations into English. And so I find it interesting that there is this one translation of habitual formations. Sankhara literally means something put together. So kara is like to make, and san is just to bring things together. It's a plural. To put things together, you're making things. And so they're formed. These are formations. They're conditioned formation. They're conditions that come together to form something. And everything that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, feel is put together. It's caused by a conglomeration of things, either a few or a lot. It forms this thing. Like so, this chair is formed by wood, and then it's got wooden pegs, and it has some metal hinges and all these things, and it's got cushions, and so we call it a chair. It's put together. This microphone is formed with metal, and on the inside there's plastic and wires and all sorts of things. So you get the picture. Human beings are formed by all sorts of things coming together to form a human being. Right? So there's the body, bodily formation, and then you've got all the unseen formations like perceptions, the way we perceive things, the way the feeling tone, the way the heart and mind respond to stimulus. And of course the body also feels that as well, and also thinking and all of these things, emotions, they're all formed. Now, habitual formations, we can use the word sankhara in different ways. I'm not a Pali scholar. You'll figure that out very quickly. But mentally, also, it's formed by repeated responses to stimuli. That's where it gets into that habitual formations or habits. And habits. And there's this word in Pali called anusaya. It's anusaya. And it's often translated into English as underlying tendencies or underlying habits. And so it's anusaya. So they haven't broken out into full-blown defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion. They haven't broken out into those unskillful responses, either inwardly or outwardly. But it's that undercurrent. There's an undercurrent of habitual, these tendencies. We might tend towards something. And that tendency and that's a neutral, I'm speaking in completely neutral tones, is it could be the most wonderful tendency, or it can be something which is really unskillful or unhelpful or obstructive. So maybe our underlying tendency to respond to certain stimuli is compassion, or loving kindness, or generosity. Or maybe, that underlying we might have an underlying tendency towards being quick to be angered, or quick to be greedy, or quick to be. It could be anything. But these are creations. It wasn't just something that somebody zapped us and said, okay, this person's going to get, these are your underlying tendencies. No, we created them. Now they might be created, they will be created, not might. They are created through our environment. So we're conditioned beings. We're conditioned by when we were born. So what era were we born in? What was the cultural norms and tones of when we were born? Our socioeconomic situation, what kind of, with our family, what our teachers were like at school, what was the school like, what was the neighborhood like, what was the city like, what was the culture, goes on and on like this, so, I was born in 1959 in Northern California, outside of San Francisco. I was raised during the hippie era. There was a lot of that was going on around me. That was my conditioning. Right? And so then, and the sort of seeing things, my conditioning of growing up during the astronaut era and whatever, the Vietnam War, and those were the conditioning elements of me growing up, or at least some of them, just a small smidgen, handful of them. But then where we grew up, then as we get older, what we kind of fell into, what kind of friends we associated with, and what kind of... this all goes into the conditioning of our being. But we do have choices. We do have choices. We are not just slaves to our conditioning. And so, especially once we maybe walk through that doorway of spiritual practice. So we enter that doorway of spiritual practice where we're interested in changing, we're interested in developing the heart, to cultivate and use the conditions to actually release the unhelpful anusaya, the unhelpful habitual tendencies, and maybe the sankharas, those habitual formations, which they're habits. And if we can we can create a new habit of not following the old habit. So then, as through meditation, through quietude, through seeing, through clearly seeing, then when we see those impulses hit, maybe that trigger, and it maybe triggers a latent tendency in us to respond. So maybe I'll use something, I don't know, it's a little bit, well, it actually happens. like, you're living in the monastery, so as I mentioned, and most of us are living here right now, apart from the cooks, we don't have any say in what gets put on the servery, the food servery. So you'll get into the food line and you're going to see the food. Now, seeing the food, because what we do have a choice of is what we take. We don't have to take everything. So when you get into the food line, and you're going to look, you're going to go, all right, okay, there's this rice and that rice and this rice, and then you go, oh, there's potatoes and veggies over here, and then you go, okay, this is the dal, and it goes on like this. So you're going to see things that are more attractive to you, foods that you are drawn to and that you find delicious or you find better for your body, or things that you're going to see that maybe you're allergic to and all of that, and that's going to make your choices. However, there is room for greed, okay? And eating is one of the few things we're still allowed to eat. So no sex, no drugs, no rock and roll, no shopping, no movies, but we can eat. Hot showers, there's still a few things in life, right? And so, by the way, there's a lot more. And so we can get in there. And so maybe there's a pizza there, and it's been very carefully cut up into maybe 16 pieces. There's a big pizza, and there's 30 people going through the food line. Do you take 2 pieces? You might want to. Or do you just take 1? Somebody's got to take 1, right? You don't want to have 16 pieces of pizza still sitting there at the end of the day. So, but do you take 2? I once saw, not in this country, but somewhere else, I saw a monk take like 4. Anyway. Nobody died, so there was still plenty of food. But I have to admit, my mind was like, whoa, come on, guy. Venerable, please. I didn't say anything, though. That would be bad form. So, but yeah, is our tendency when we see that to say, oh, well, there's 16 pieces and there's 30 of us. Well, I don't have to take 1. I don't need to take 1 of those. Maybe somebody else can have that. So I'm just using maybe examples that do come up from time to time here. But it's those. What's our immediate response to something? So maybe somebody falls down, or there's something. What's our immediate response? Is it one to, oh, how can I help? Or is it one like, oh, I don't want to get involved, or don't want to bother? I mean, the examples are myriad examples that we can use. So these are habits and habitual responses. Habitual responses. So if we are, to just seeing or hearing something that we don't like, is our response to complain. Do we have a tendency towards complaining? Now, does that mean we never complain about something? No, it's not saying that. But what's our tendency? Is our tendency, because oftentimes the inner world that we're dwelling in, right, oftentimes we as human, I know I've gotten into that trap of complaining about something and never said anything outwardly, but just my mind complaining, what's going on? Why are they doing this? Or, don't they realize? The mind just mashing away over something quite small, and that can become a habit. Or that habit of outwardly complaining. Maybe we find a kindred spirit, in the community where you sit and have a real good complaining session. So anyway, I'm just using a few examples, but and that's suffering. This is suffering. This is discontent. This is dis-ease. The habit of responding skillfully, the habit of being helpful, the habit of wanting to do things, wholesome things. This is release. This is a peaceful abiding. Unless, like I said earlier in this talk, we grab our goodness and form an identity. and maybe start comparing ourselves. So that's where, the goodness, the wholesomeness in our life can actually get hijacked. It can get stolen, and we can get sidetracked. Can we just do goodness instead of be good? Can we just, as we do those things, let them go? We remember them. It's really good to remember also the wholesome things that we do. It can bring joy, and that's why, brings joy to our life, if we do something, whatever it is, it's good to recollect. But keep an eye out that we're not, here again, are we being born into a new identity of, I'm a good person, and that person over there is not a good person. This is where there are these traps in spiritual practice, and if we're not aware of them, that's why making ourselves familiar with a good breadth, the breadth of the Buddha's teachings. Doesn't mean we have to know all of there's thousands of suttas, but to know the breadth of and the scope of these teachings, so that we're alert to these traps in practice. And so, even with really serious meditation practice and Dhamma practice, we can fall into traps of, especially in what I've been pointing out, maybe forming an identity. This is or wanting to become. I want to become spiritual. I want to become, or I want to be seen as being spiritual. I want to be a teacher. That can be a trap if we're not careful. Or the opposite, that sort of the opposite of the coin is that annihilationist tendency. Well, I don't want to be, it's a pushing away instead of just going with a flow of practice, a flow of life, and whether these things happen or not, whether. If somebody sees us as being spiritual or not, it doesn't matter. What's important is our inner world and how we interface with the world. That's what matters. It's not about identity. We're not forming identities as monks and nuns, or as lay team members, or lay practitioners, or as Buddhists, or not being Buddhist. It's not about identity. And forming identity is also an underlying tendency. This is an anusaya. It's a habit. And I think that's why using our own life maybe to reflect on the different things that we've been in this life. Often, because in Buddhism and other faiths as well, some of them we talk about rebirth or reincarnation, but all these it's also the many rebirths, moment by moment, or day by day, or week or year or whatever. What have we been in our life? Or what have we believed ourselves to be in our lives? Really invested in. These are births. This is psychological and identity birth. And so there's this habit to also fill that void. Maybe we lose, like if we lose our, sometimes we've heard of people feeling like, well, I lost my identity. Somebody actually came today. I was speaking to after the meal, and they're putting a lot of effort into meditation, and they shared their experience of the first glimpse of not self, of that sense of non-identity, that first glimpse, and they said that they left them. There was a sense, kind of like a fear. A sort of existential fear. And I've heard this from a lot of people over the years, especially when that first true, real glimpse at the sort of not self nature of things. That we aren't, our essence is not our body. So like this evening, I really suggest, if you've never read what we chanted this morning in English, it's the Anatta-lakkhana Sutta, the Sutta on not self, characteristic not self. I really suggest reading it. It's very simple. And it's about body, feelings, or feeling tone, perceptions, mental formations, and sense consciousness. And that's not who and what we are. It's not our essence. But we're through our cultural conditioning, our family conditioning, our conditioning, we have an underlying tendency, or there's a really good chance we have this tendency to cling to these things as being who and what we are. And so if we can just see that, oh, okay, that's a conventional reality. So it's not like so for instance, Phoebe's just flown in from California and other people have arrived, and then the sisters have arrived back from India. When they get to passport control, when the passport person says, "Name please," don't get all spiritual and say, "These 5 khandhas is not my real essence." Okay, you, back room. Just give them your passport, answer to your name, and as people say, if they say, "Where do you want to go?" say, "Yeah, I want to go here." So that's conventional reality. This is convenient fictions, as Ajahn Ahimsako calls them. The convenient fictions of this is my body, today I'm feeling quite up, I'm feeling quite vibrant. That's the feeling tone I'm having. It's pleasant. I'm perceiving, this is the way I perceive things this evening. This is what I'm sharing. This is what I'm doing and thinking. Yeah, these are my thoughts. I'm giving this talk. So conventionally speaking, these are all mundane truths. Mundane truths. On a mundane truth is that I have my own habits. I've got some good habits. I've got some bad habits probably. Oftentimes we're blind to our bad habits. That's why we have blind spots. That's why spiritual friends are important. So it's how we hold all of this, and then also to be able to see these tendencies, the tendencies that maybe are creating a sense of identity, the underlying tendencies that are triggers. But it's not our essence. So oftentimes with human beings, what we do is what we're taught to do is to say, "Oh, well, this is just who I am." Maybe somebody points out, "Wow, you seem pretty fiery temperament there." And, well, no, it's just who I am. Anybody ever heard that before? Yeah. Well, that in a way, in a conventional manner, that's true, but it's not our essence. That is created, it is conditioned, and we can change the underlying tendencies. We can weaken them. We can change. So when we see the responses, if we get in tune with those tendencies, and if we're able to not respond to those trigger points, those impulses, if we can weaken them, or if we can respond less strongly, if we can cultivate wholesome responses, we can change. So please don't let anybody, please don't believe it if people say, "Can't change." I just don't, I don't believe it, and I really encourage people to really look at this. Don't believe it. We can change. We can make changes. And it takes time. It takes patience. We can make wholesome, we can bring into being wholesomeness, like cultivate wholesomeness. And this is all right effort. This is what the Buddha referred to as right effort. We can abandon the unwholesome. We can cultivate the wholesome. So, I should strive to abandon my former habits. The unwholesome ones. Going back to the way I started. So, okay, I think that's probably enough for this evening. So. don't think I've ever done this before, but let's chant 10 subjects for recollection. And it's on page 57 in the dark brown volume. It's in Pali English. And it's one of my favorite chants in terms of its content, because it really gives us a lot to work with. So. Namayang pabajita binha pachawekana patang banamase dasai me bhikkhave dhamma pabajitena abinhang pachawekitaba gata medasa. Because there are 10 dhammas which should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. What are these 10? Vevanniyamiya drupagato tipa bhajitena abinhang pachawekitaba. I am no longer living according to worldly aims and values. This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Bharabati badame jivikati pabajitena abinhang pachavekitabang. My very life is sustained through the gifts of others. This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Anyo me akapo karaniyo tipa bhajitena abinhang pachavekitabang. I should strive to abandon my former habits. This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Gachinuko meyata silato na upawadati tipa bhajitena abinhang pachavekitabang. Does regret this should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Gachinuko manganu vichya vinyu sabramachari silato na upawadanti tipa bhajitena abinhang pachavekitabang. Could my spiritual companions find fault with my conduct? This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Zabehi me piyehi mana pehi nana bhavo vinabhavo tipa bhajitena abinhang pachavekitabang. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Gamma sako mikamadayado kamma yoni kamma bandhu kamma patisarano yang kammang karisami kalyana va papakang va tasadayado bhavisamiti papatitena abhinhang pacavekitabang. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Katam Buddha Samiratindiva Vitipadanti Tipa Bhajitena Abhinhang Pacavekitabang. The days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Gachinuko hang sunya gare abhiramami tipa bhajitena abhinhang pacavekitabang. Do I delight in solitude or not? This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Atinuko me yuddhari manusadhamma alamaranyana dasana viseso adigato sohang pachime kale sabramachari puto namang kubhavisa mitipa bhajitena abhinhang pacavekitabang. Has my practice borne fruit with freedom or insight, so that at the end of my life I need not feel ashamed when questioned by my spiritual companions? This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Yimeko bhikkhave dasadhamma pabhajitena abhinhang pacavekitabhati. Bhikkhus, these are the 10 dhammas to be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. Chant the closing homage in Pali and English. That's on page 16 in the dark brown book.